Sim Harris was one of the hostages we saw in that report climbing over the balcony and joins us now from Hampshire. And we are also joined by one of the men who stormed the building and rescued him, former SAS Blue team leader, Rusty Furman. And one of the remarkable things, 40 years on, is that you two haven't met, have you, since?
I don't think so, no.
This is the first meeting.
And, of course, because of social distancing, we can't get you together in the same room. But, you know, just introducing you both virtually, that must be a remarkable moment for you, Sim, in particular. You know, 40 years on, you are now on screen with one of the men who saved your life that day.
Yes, it's incredible, really. I've met one or two of his colleagues, but I've never met Rusty. All I can do is thank him very much for what he did, because I may not be alive today if they hadn't rescued us.
And Rusty, I mean, 40 years on, what are your memories of that siege that we saw play out live on our television screens?
Well, the memories will never go away, do they? It's probably my finest moment. And to save the 19 hostages that day is something else. I've never met any of the hostages we saved at all, none of them. It took me 37 years to meet Max Vernon, the head negotiator. So actually, it's just one of those things. We called it a day job at the time. And of course, the hostages were saved, and that was the mission. We've always got to remember what the mission was. It was to save the hostages, rescue the hostages.
I think, Sim, the thing that always strikes us about anybody in the armed forces, but particularly the special forces, is how humble they are. And as Rusty just said, it was a day job. It was what we had to do. But from your perspective, you lived that siege, every single day of it, inside the embassy. What was your reason for being there, and what were those 6 days like, surrounded by these armed guards?
Well, I went down to the embassy with a producer from the BBC. I was a news reportist at the time, to get a visa to return to Iran to, do coverage there. It was a roller coaster, really. We went through highs and lows. We were carted about the embassy. The higher up in the embassy we were, the more threatened the hostage takers felt they were. We had moments of hugging each other, hugging the terrorists. It was a weird atmosphere. We went from tension to, elation and relaxation. It was a complete roller coaster.
Did you have any idea that the SAS and the armed forces were going to create this siege and get you out?
No idea at all. In any discussions with Trevor Lock, who was the policeman in the embassy with us, we agreed that the British police would never attack if we were safe, if we weren't harmed. And the moment they put Lavasani's body out, one of the hostages who was shot, the first hostage who was shot, they asked us what the police would do, and we said, we've never lied to you. We don't know now. We've always assured you you'd not be attacked if you didn't hurt us.
It sounds like, and you mentioned as well that you at times were hugging the terrorists, the hostage takers, talking to them very civilly. It sounds like, and I think you've talked about this, there was a bit of Stockholm syndrome. You had some sympathy for them along the way. Yeah,
I'm afraid you do. It becomes you inside against them outside. And in our case, it was us inside against the police negotiations. They wanted things, we wanted things on their behalf, broadcasts or whatever, or release of hostages. They wanted release of hostages. But the main group of hostages had the Stockholm syndrome, but there were one or two who were quite radical Khomeini supporters who argued constantly with the terrorists.
As you said, it was the murder of the press secretary of the embassy, Abbas Lavasani, on the 6th day when things changed. Sim, for you, his murder must have been extremely frightening.
Well, yes, I'd been involved a little bit. I'd been taken down with Trevor to the basement where they tied him up, and they told us to tell the police what was happening. And my final conversation with the police was, they said, Sim, please try and stop them doing this. And I said, I can't do any more. You know, there's nothing coming from you. This is the situation we're in. And we went back upstairs. We heard some shots. I think one of the second in command walked in, and Ron Morris, who was a sort of caretaker at the embassy, said, have you killed him? And they said, yes, we've killed him, and we're going to kill one of you every half hour.
And what did that make you think and feel at that moment?
Well, from that point on, I'd always been a bit optimistic that we would come out okay, but I really was really scared then, really scared. And I was really thinking how my wife and children might manage and what the BBC would do.
And Rusty, you were on standby at that point. Mr. Lavasavani's body was thrown out onto the pavement. What happened next?
Yeah, he was a press attaché for the Iranian Embassy. Young fella, quite right. What he was doing, he was sticking his chest out against a terrorist. It sounded like he would be the first one to be executed. He wasn't shot, he was executed, shot 3 times. Having been tied up first. So there's the cowardly bit, first of all, with the terrorists. As soon as his body was dumped outside and the police went forward with the stretcher to pick him up, we had a Prime Minister, Mrs. Margaret Thatcher, and with her there was no messing about whatsoever. That was proof of murder on UK soil. Once it was proof of murder, things changed. Don't forget, a lot of people don't understand, or may have forgot, that this was a Metropolitan Police operation all the way through, supported by the SAS. Soon as proof of murder, me and my team and the Red Team, all B Squadron, were put on high alert. We knew then that it wouldn't be long. And of course, it wasn't long before the order came straight down to get into our final assault positions, which we did. It took 16 minutes to get into position. Once we got the go, and the great big bang that you hear, and the one on the front where you were, Sim, once that happened, there was no stopping us. It was rescue the hostages, and about 32 of us entered the building in different areas from the top to the bottom. It took 11 minutes to clear it. It took 11 minutes, all told, from 1923 hours to 1934 hours to rescue all 19 hostages. Yes, 5 terrorists were killed, 1 got out. And I think the rest now is history.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened.
Rusty, did you have any idea that it was being shown on television and the footage would exist like this? Were you aware that there were TV cameras around? These days we have rolling news, we have helicopters, we have all sorts of footage of events unfolding, and it's a very common thing. But this was 40 years ago. Yeah.
No, 40 years ago, we knew exactly where the press crews were. They were put there on purpose, one on each side of the embassy on Kensington Road. They were shielded off, and actually the assault, when it went in, I remember that it was going to be smoked off and they wouldn't have seen anything. And from what I was told afterwards, Mrs. Thatcher said, we're not going to smoke it off. We're going to show the world how we deal with terrorists. I didn't know that at the time. I was in my black kit ready to go. Somewhere in that bracket, that's exactly what happened. The smoke generators at the front were never used. The film crews did exactly what they did. They filmed it all. And the first time I knew about that was about 9:30, just after that same evening, when we were in Regent's Park Barracks waiting for the Prime Minister and William Whitelaw, the Home Secretary, to come and say, thanks, job well done. That was the first time. And we were going, how did that happen? It was supposed to be smoked off, but it never did.
Sim, 11 minutes to get you out. I mean, at that point, what was going through your mind? Because I expect you hadn't had any advance warning.
And that's you climbing over the balcony as well, Sim, isn't it? There's actually footage of you doing that climb.
That's,
yeah, I was with Trevor Lock on the landing, first floor landing. The police wanted to talk to us. They said they were giving in. They wanted to talk to us about a coach to go to Heathrow, a plane to fly us out, and all the detail. They wanted to go into immense detail about that, who was going to drive the coach. And they kept on asking to speak to Salim or on the leader. So they knew they were obviously planning to have him as close to Trevor as possible. Trevor kept a gun throughout the whole siege, a handgun throughout the whole siege, which was quite remarkable. And that was Salim was very agitated, and then the lights went out and there was a crash of glass. I think it might have been a boot going through a window, but I just ran back into the room behind me and went to a chink of light, opened a shutter, and found this sort of incredible frogman type character standing there. I mean, it was like being in a movie. It was incredible. He indicated for me to get down and pointed to the side of the window. And then the window blew out in a huge explosion, and in they came. And the last one just said, "Stay there." Unfortunately, the room, they put in stun grenades and flashbangs, and the room started burning. The curtain round me started to burn, and I crawled out onto the balcony and was about to jump to the next balcony the other way when I was told I'd be shot if I didn't stay down. They kept shouting, "Harris, stay down." And then eventually they said, "Look to your left, look to your left." And I thought, this is madness. You saw this frogman calling me across the balcony, across the flagpole. I thought, they're going to take me back in again. This is crazy. But I did. And when you get thrown out of a building by the SAS, it's pretty rough, I tell you. There were girls literally being thrown down the stairs, and you were pushed all the way. It was absolutely phenomenal.